I'm Mr. R, and this is the Rondinelli Project. For those of you that have followed me in the past on creating your own fish replicas, I had to step away from that hobby for some time due to an injury and then a subsequent surgery. But now I'm back, and I'm planning to start a new replica video, so pull up your chair and feel free to follow along. In this first video, I will be demonstrating how I prepare and pose the fish in bedding to create the initial position and mold. Now, I've decided on a species, the green sunfish. Why the green sunfish? Well, to be honest, many people confuse this fish with the warmouth, the bluegill, and the rock bass. So I thought by creating a replica, I could show the subtle differences and help clear up the common confusion about this unique fish. So let's get started on step one, creating the mold. This is a green sunfish, and it was frozen. So what I am doing is thawing it out, getting ready to prepare it to create the initial mold for this particular fish replica. So I just put it in a pan of water and I let it sit for a period of time until everything is completely unfrozen. After the thawing of the fish, I covered it with a wet paper towel, put it in the fridge, and I'm bringing it back out now, getting prepared to remove the fins in order to create the mold. Certain fins have to be removed, the pectoral fins and the pelvic fins. And that's what you're looking at here, the left and right pectoral fin and the left and right pelvic fin. Now, the reason I use those containers, it's easy to mix those fins up once they are removed from the fish. So to keep it all straight in my head, I have these separate pans to place the fins in once they are removed from the fish's body, but they must be removed. So let's just start here with the left pectoral fin, and you want to cut it real close to the base of the fish, and once it's removed, I put that in a corresponding left pectoral fin container, which I have marked. After that's done, I turn the fish over and I do the right pectoral fin. Same way, cut it real close to the base. Once it's removed, I put it in that container. And we'll go on now to the pelvic fins, which are located on the bottom front part of the fish. Now my containers I have labeled as left and right rear pelvic fin. That's just my labeling system, so I know which fin is which. And now I'm removing the right rear pelvic fin. Once I've removed those fins, I'll take the containers and I'll refrigerate them until I'm ready to create the mold of the fins. And that's right, I create individual molds of those four fins and I'll recreate those with fiberglass and put on. Now what you're looking at here is the starting process. I use high fiber for the bedding, and this is my place that I put the high fiber, and I kind of create the curve of the fish. And this is all determined ahead of time. It's really up to you how you want to pose the fish. Let me explain that a little better, because this is the artistic part of it. There's no right or wrong way, but you want to understand the species that you're portraying. So position of the fish depends on you, okay? So you want that to be as natural as possible. You want to visualize that finished before you ever start. Now I'm putting a little bit of a curve in this fish. It's not a lot. I'm laying down the bedding, and we're going to push the fish into this soft clay-like material. And the idea is to expose half of the fish for the A side of the mold. It's not the side that's touching the high fiber, okay? It's the side we are going to create the mold on, is the side that you can see. So you really have to take your time here and get this right, or you create problems for yourself down the line. One of the things you want to make sure is that you have everything positioned right. And that's part of the skill and practice. I'm also filling the mouth. I'm opening it as natural as possible. You don't want to overextend the mouth. You can also do a closed mouth. Fish very rarely have their mouth real wide open like you see a lot of mouths. That's when they're feeding. You want to portray your fish as natural as possible. You can see that I filled the mouth with the high fiber, and that's because I need to remove all of that area of fiberglass with a Dremel tool once we get to the casting part, but that's down the road. Let's not worry about that right now, but it is important to fill that mouth so that you can see the lip detail. I'm working all the way around the fins, and I'm getting that smooth just so that I have a good area around the fish that's fairly smooth. It makes your mold easier to separate too once we get to that point. Okay, and one of the hardest fins for me anyway is the dorsal fin. Those are the ones with the spines on this particular species. If you don't get those in the bedding just right, when you pour your resin over the top of this, it can run back underneath the fins, and that's called an underrun, and you don't want that. I'm using water to spray the fish and get all of the high fiber off of the fish's body. What I'm doing here is putting in markers to help put the mold back together once we have an A and B side. I'm also going to put a circle around the operculum, the gill opening, and the mouth. I fill those spaces with high fiber because I need to remove that area to create the open mouth and to create a place for the gills to go in later. And how we do that is with a Dremel tool. We'll cut those areas out. You'll see later in the next stage. Now I'm going to use a chemical called PVA. This is a mold release. That's basically all it is. And you don't need to use very much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the fish. In this step, just the fish. And I brush it on. You don't want to put it on too heavy. You just liberally put it on. I'll speed this up here. We cover the dorsal fin, the tail, the anal fin, the whole body, the whole thing. And that helps bring out scale detail, because I'm going to use a hair dryer in just a second here and dry off that PVA. And it just raises the scales a little bit, and it'll give you some fine detail when we create the mold. And you don't want to overdo that, or you can shrink the fins. You just want to lightly dry it, get most of the moisture off of it. And we're getting ready for our first mix to coat this side of the mold. Remember I told you AB mold. So we're going to use fiberglass resin and MEKP. Now you might be asking yourself, what in the heck is MEKP? Well, that stands for methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Now look, this stuff is dangerous. The MEKP, you don't want to get that in your eyes. It can cause blindness. You just got to use some common sense. I'm going to fill up a paper cup on a scale to get 1.6 ounces. The 1.6 is just basically, it's a small fish. I want to make sure I have enough material to cover the fish. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the other half that thickens up the fiberglass resin. This is the Bondo mix. Now the catalyst, which makes this get hard, is not MEKP. It's benzoyl peroxide. And you need an accurate scale. A good postal scale works really well for this process. And it's very important that before you add the catalyst, which is the MEKP and the hardener for the Bondo, those are two different hardeners. MEKP for the liquid resin and benzoyl peroxide for the Bondo. And they are not the same. And people will argue that you can use MEKP in the Bondo. That is a huge no-no. Chemically, it's dangerous. Use the hardeners that come with the material. And I mix that up really well. You want to mix that. There's your MEKP and the benzoyl peroxide. Now, MEKP and liquid resin is 1/10. That means 1/10 of an ounce gets a drop. All you got to look at are your numbers on the scale. Since 1.6 ounces, that's 16. If you get rid of the decimal point, it's 16 drops. So it's 1 drop for every 1/10 of an ounce. And it has to be mixed thoroughly. When it comes to the benzoyl peroxide, it's like toothpaste. I put a couple little small pea-sized amounts for the amount of material that I'm using and mix that all together very well, off the bottom, off the sides. And once it's all mixed, then you cover the fish completely like you see here. Now I'm speeding this up. And you want to make sure that you cover all of the markers, those indentations that I put in the bedding. And once you have that all in place, you let it set. And it takes about a half an hour for this process here to set. The hotter it is, the quicker it'll set, and the colder it is, the slower it may take to set. Eventually, this will cure, and it will become very smooth to the touch. Like you can see here, it's not sticky, so this is ready for the next step. I need to cover this with fiberglass matting. Now I'm only going to use a small amount of fiberglass. I'm going to use 1 full ounce. That's 10 drops of MEKP. And I'm going to mix that up. And we're going to take a brush and we're going to brush that over the mold. I didn't show it being mixed, but you want to mix that really well for a minute or two. Then I brush that on. You want to cover the entire mold with a thin coat. And once you have that on there, you add your fiberglass matting, which kind of tears apart and looks like little strings. There you go. And you will dab that with the remaining fiberglass resin, and it melts that fiberglass, and it's what makes the mold itself very rigid. If you didn't do this, you would crack your mold. So that's why this is kind of a two-step process in creating the A side of the mold. I know it looks complicated, but learning this, it was for me, because there was really nothing out there online that told me how to do this. So there was a process of trial and error, but I'm saving you all that headache. And speaking of headaches, you want to wear a respirator when you work with this stuff. You want to be in a well-ventilated area. This is carcinogenic material. You don't want to be breathing it in your lungs. You don't want it touching your skin. So wear gloves and a respirator. Well ventilated. Don't do this in the house. Do this in a garage or somewhere where you got lots and lots of air. And what I'm doing is I'm adding fiberglass to areas equally until it strengthens up the mold. And once that's all done, you want it to set. Once again, it might take anywhere from a half an hour to an hour to cure. You don't want it to be tacky or anything like that. It'll dry completely as long as you mixed it properly. Now, you need to clean your brush. If you don't, that fiberglass resin is going to harden in the brush, and this hardening process is going to start real soon, so you can't waste any time. You put a little bit of acetone in a paper cup and clean your brush thoroughly, and then set it out to dry. It'll evaporate and it'll dry. Now, once this has set, you're going to flip your mold over, and you're going to clean up all of the high fiber. Take it off the fish and off of the cured fiberglass resin and Bondo mix. And the reason we're doing that is we have to clean the fish all off to get ready to pour the other side of the mold. And you want to be very careful that you don't disrupt the fins. You don't want to move the fish at all. You want to just make sure that that fish stays in there. And the PVA that we used helps keep that fish in place. And what I do is I've taken it to my cleaning station here, and I use an old toothbrush. I collect those once you get a new toothbrush. I just keep those. That works great for cleaning off the mold. And I'll speed this up, but I'm cleaning all the markers, I'm cleaning all of the resin off of the fish. I'm checking the fins to make sure nothing moved. And if it does move, you can just kind of pull it back into place. You'll be able to see the indentation of the mold itself. And this fiberglass resin makes a beautiful replica of all the scales and fin markings and everything. So that's what it looks like on the other side. And now what I'm going to do is get ready to pour on this side of the mold. Important that you dry off the mold, so I use the hair dryer, and I'm going to dry off the mold itself. I'm going to dry off this side of the fish. I've already put high fiber back in on this side of the gill slit or the operculum to flare that gill a little bit, and made sure that the bedding was back in the mouth. And now I'm adding my PVA. Now, a little bit different here. What we're going to do is we're going to coat the entire mold, okay, the left side of the mold. We're going to just paint it on thinly, and we're also going to cover the fish as well. And you don't have to put it on real thick, but you don't want to put it on too lightly either. I just brush it on. Some people will spray this with their airbrush. Later on, when we get to a different stage, I will use the airbrush to cover the molds with PVA, but that's getting ready for the cast. That's a whole different situation. You can see that I'm covering everything here, and make sure you cover your markers. And once that's done, use a hair dryer again to kind of rush dry the PVA. I do that because, you know, you've got a fish here, and the decay process is going to start. We all know what fish is like. It just, you know, it doesn't stay fresh very long. I'm using just a pair of tin snips. I use these to kind of trim the mold, kind of neaten it up. That's the only reason I'm doing that. It's kind of, those fibers are a little bit rough along the edges, and you want to be careful you don't cut yourself with the fiberglass and the edges of the resin. But here is, I'm not doing the mix again, showing you how to mix it. I've already got it mixed up. It's a 50-50 mix with the catalyst, the MEKP and the benzoyl peroxide, and mix it really well. All the sides, the bottom, mix it for a couple minutes. And then I'm going to cover the other side of the mold and the fish. I want to make sure I cover all my markers and the fish completely and let that set. Once again, about a half an hour it will take to set. And now you're ready to add your fiberglass matting. So I mixed up, I only needed to use 1 ounce, so that's 10 drops of MEKP, and I'm going to lightly coat this side of the mold. This is the B side. You just want to cover it, almost like, looks like pancake syrup. Once that's covered, then you'll lay on the matting for strength. That's the reason you're doing that. And that fiberglass resin melts that fiberglass. Those strands, as they harden, give it rigidity and makes it very, very, very hard. Because if you don't do that, you'll crack your mold when you separate these two. And the MEKP is, will start setting. So you don't want to, you have a little bit of time to do this, but you don't want to spend too much time. You want to get that done, and then it will dry. It will set. And what I'm doing here is just kind of trimming up the mold to make it easier to separate. The PVA is what makes it possible to separate these two halves. If you didn't use the PVA, it'd be really, really hard to separate these two. So I just use a screwdriver, and I put it in between the seam and start cracking it open. And you have to take your time here. Otherwise, you'll break the mold, and then you spend all this time and you ruin the fish, and you're going to have to get another specimen. And, once your mold's made, your molds, last quite a while. You can probably get, 4 or 5, maybe 6 replicas out of each mold. If you take good care of your molds, they last a long time. I'm trying to break the bond between these two halves. It's time. That's all. Don't rush this process. They will separate. I sped up. There it let go, and I'm going to separate the two halves. There you go. There's one half, the right half and the left half. And the markers, make sure you put it back together the right way. Now we're going to discard the fish. So you want to wrap that up and throw that away. I'm cleaning any high fiber in the operculum, the gill openings, the gill slit openings that protect the gills. And there are your two halves, side A and side B, to create the mold. Now we have to clean these molds, so we go back to the cleaning area. I just used Dawn dish detergent and an old toothbrush, clean out the mold, all the nooks and crannies, rinse them out really well. Inspect the mold for any kind of overruns or underruns, and this mold's in pretty good shape. There's a couple minor details that have to be done. But once both halves are cleaned, just set them aside to dry, and here they are. You want to make sure that you can open the mold easily and put it back together, and that is step one, creating the body. In step two, we will be creating the mold for the fins that I removed earlier, and I'll show you that process next. There you have it. That's how I create the initial mold, and that process can be applied to any freshwater species. In the next video, step number 2, I'll demonstrate how to create the mold from the fins I removed earlier. I know these videos tend to be long, but that was the exact problem when I was trying to figure out this process myself. They were either too fast or the creators skipped too much information that I needed to understand. If you have any questions or didn't understand something about the process, just ask your questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer all your questions. This is the Rondinelli Project. I'm Mr. R. Have a great day. And go create something from nature. Never stop learning. And we going.